You know that surreal moment when you walk into your backyard and see your future mother-in-law casually committing arson like she's grilling burgers for the 4th of July? Yeah, that happened to me. On a Tuesday, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Because apparently my wedding day wasn't worth celebrating, it was worth cremating. I'm Isabella Fletcher, 29, freelance graphic designer, professional overthinker, and apparently, based on recent events, the star of a twisted reality show I never auditioned for. 3 weeks before I was supposed to marry the love of my life, I came home to find smoke billowing from my backyard and my future mother-in-law standing over my grandmother's vintage wedding dress with a lighter in one hand and her phone in the other, filming herself like she was giving a TED Talk on family sabotage. "This wedding is worthless. You'll never be family. My son deserves someone real." She was literally narrating her crime. For posterity. While my grandmother's French lace dress, the only thing I had left of her, went up in flames like a rejected sacrifice to the gods of toxic in-laws. Here's the thing about shock. It's got this weird clarity to it. While most people would have screamed, cried, maybe thrown a lawn chair, I pulled out my phone and hit record. Because if there's one thing working freelance teaches you, it's document everything. Especially when your mother-in-law is having a full-blown villain origin story moment in your own backyard. The dress had taken me 6 months to restore. 6 months. I'd driven to 3 different vintage textile specialists across North Carolina, spent over $2,000 on delicate restoration work, and cried genuine tears of joy when I finally tried it on 2 weeks ago. It fit perfectly. It smelled like my grandmother's lavender sachets. It was the one piece of her I had left after she passed when I was 16. And Edith Ramsey, 61 years of concentrated bitterness wrapped in Chanel No. 5 and passive-aggressive Bible quotes, just torched it like she was disposing of evidence. But here's where it gets interesting. See, Edith had been gunning for me since the day Silas brought me home 4 years ago. I wasn't good enough. My family didn't have connections. I worked from home in yoga pants instead of maintaining appearances at some country club. Every Sunday dinner at her massive Myers Park mansion was a masterclass in subtle humiliation. Comments about my quaint little career, questions about when I'd settle into something more stable, suggestions that Silas was too young to settle down despite being 32 years old. Silas, sweet, conflict-avoidant Silas Ramsey, my fiancé, operations manager at a logistics company, and Edith's emotional support son since his dad died 5 years ago, always brushed it off. "Mom's just protective. She'll come around. She's had a hard time since Dad passed." Yeah, so hard she turned her youngest kid into her personal therapist, financial advisor, and emotional hostage. The woman had a key to our house. For emergencies. Silas gave it to her when we bought the place 6 months ago. A gorgeous 2-story white colonial with a wraparound porch on a tree-lined street where neighbors actually waved. I loved that house. It was ours. Our first real adult milestone together. Except it turns out emergency access meant unrestricted entry whenever I feel like sabotaging your life. She'd shown up that Saturday afternoon while Silas was on a business trip to Atlanta. Just walked right in like she owned the place. Which, in her mind, she probably did. Found my dress hanging in the guest room closet where I'd been keeping it away from potential coffee spills and general pre-wedding chaos, and decided it needed to die. Standing there in my backyard, watching her cackle over the burning remnants of my grandmother's legacy, phone still recording, I felt something shift. Not rage. Rage would have been too hot, too immediate. This was colder, strategic. Like my brain just clicked into a different frequency and said, "Okay, game on." I saved the video to 3 different places: cloud storage, a thumb drive I kept in my car, and a text to my best friend Fern Barrett with the message, "If anything happens to me, this is why." Then I called 911. My voice was steady, weirdly steady, the kind of steady that probably concerned the dispatcher more than hysterics would have. "Yes. Hi, I need to report a breaking and entering, destruction of property, and honestly, I'm not sure what you call it when someone commits arson in your backyard while filming a manifesto, but I've got video evidence, and she's still here." Edith's face when she heard me on the phone? Chef's kiss. pure panic masked as indignation. "You're calling the police? On family?" "You just said I'd never be family, Edith. Make up your mind." The officers arrived in 12 minutes. Edith tried the whole hysterical daughter-in-law routine, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, explaining how I'd been so unstable lately, and she was just trying to help. And this was all a misunderstanding. Then I showed them the video. Her voice clear as day. "This wedding is worthless. You'll never be family. My son deserves someone real." Her face gleeful as she poked at burning lace with a stick. Her confession, unprompted, explaining how she'd do anything to stop this joke of a wedding. One officer, a woman in her 40s with the exhausted energy of someone who'd seen this exact brand of family drama before, just looked at Edith and said, "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to step over here." They took my statement, photographed the scene, collected the remains of the dress in an evidence bag that felt heavier than it should have, filed a formal report for breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and destruction of property. Edith left in the back of a patrol car, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that I was overreacting, that Silas would never forgive me for this. And standing there in my backyard, ash still floating in the humid June air, I realized something. This wasn't just about a dress. This was about control. This was about a woman who'd spent 5 years turning her son into a replacement husband and saw me as the ultimate threat to her dominion. But here's what Edith didn't know, what she couldn't have known, because she was too busy playing puppet master to notice the strings were fraying. That night, after the police left, after I'd scrubbed smoke stains off my hands and called Silas to give him the sanitized version of events, I couldn't sleep. So I did what any mildly neurotic person does at 2 a.m. I started organizing. We were supposed to merge finances after the wedding. Silas had been gathering documents, tax returns, investment statements, property deeds. He kept them in a filing cabinet in our home office, meticulously organized because that's who he is. I wasn't snooping. I was consolidating, getting everything ready for our appointment with the financial planner next week, and that's when I found it. The copy of his father's will, the trust documents, the email correspondence between Silas and his brothers about their inheritance, and the thing that made my blood run cold. Silas had never received his share. His brothers, Graham and Felix, both older, both already independently successful, had gotten their portions years ago. Roughly $800,000 each in commercial properties and investment accounts, distributed when they'd each gotten married and demonstrated sufficient maturity and financial stability. But Silas? Still waiting. Still being told by Edith, the executor of the estate, that he wasn't quite ready yet, that he needed to prove himself a bit more, that the timing wasn't right. For 4 years. 4 years of gaslighting disguised as maternal concern. 4 years of financial manipulation masked as looking out for his best interests. 4 years of Edith using a deliberately vague clause in her late husband's will, when each son demonstrates maturity and stability, as a weapon of perpetual control. And our wedding? Our marriage? That would have meant independence. Real, actual, legal independence that she couldn't manipulate or gatekeep or hold over his head. So she torched my dress. But she should have burned the paper trail too. Because sitting there at 3 a.m., reading email after email of Edith making excuses, inventing obstacles, moving goalposts, I stopped being the heartbroken bride and became something way more dangerous. Someone with receipts. Silas came home from Atlanta on Wednesday evening looking like a man who'd aged 5 years in 3 days. His tie was loosened, his usually neat hair disheveled, and he had that 1,000-yard stare people get when their mother gets arrested for committing felony property destruction. "Izzy, we need to talk." Oh, I loved how this was starting. Nothing good ever follows that sentence. It's the conversational equivalent of, "We need to discuss your performance," or "The test results came back." He sat down on our couch, the one we'd picked out together at that overpriced furniture store in South Park, arguing for 20 minutes about whether charcoal gray was too depressing, and put his head in his hands. "Mom called me. From the police station. I'm aware. She said you overreacted, that it was just a dress, and you could have talked to her instead of what, Silas?" Instead of reporting a crime, she broke into our house. She destroyed the only thing I had left of my grandmother. She filmed herself doing it while explaining how I'll never be good enough for your family. He winced. Good. He should wince. I know, but she's been through a lot since Dad died. She doesn't handle stress well, and this wedding has been really hard on her. Hard on her? I could feel that cold strategic thing from the backyard clicking back into place. The thing that turns grief into game theory. Silas. She committed arson. In our yard. To my property. That's not stress. That's criminal behavior. Can we not press charges? I'll pay for a new dress. We can push the wedding back a few months. Let things cool down. And there it was. The thing Edith had been banking on. Her sweet, conflict-avoidant baby boy, so well trained after 5 years of emotional hostage-taking that his immediate response to, "My mother committed a felony," was, "Let's just smooth this over." I looked at my fiancé, this man I'd spent 4 years building a life with, who brought me coffee in bed every Saturday, who learned how to make my grandmother's biscuit recipe from memory after I mentioned it once, and realized he had no idea how deep this went. He didn't know about the inheritance. He didn't know his mother had been financially manipulating him for years. He didn't know that every "you're not ready yet" was a lie designed to keep him dependent and controlled. So I did what any reasonable person discovering their partner's been gaslit into Stockholm Syndrome would do. I smiled, sweetly. "Of course, honey. Let me think about it." He looked so relieved I almost felt bad. Almost. Thursday morning, I called in sick to my freelance projects, which is hilarious because being freelance means you're calling in sick to yourself, and drove to a law office in downtown Charlotte that Fern had recommended. Sullivan and Associates, Estate and Family Law. Marshall Sullivan was 60-something, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen every flavor of family dysfunction and developed immunity. His office smelled like old books and expensive leather, the kind of place that charges $400 an hour and makes you feel like it's worth it. I laid out the documents I'd found, the will, the trust paperwork, the emails. He read through everything with the careful attention of a jeweler examining diamonds, occasionally making small sounds that could mean anything from "this is fascinating" to "you're completely screwed." Finally, he looked up. "This is textbook fiduciary abuse. English, please? Your future mother-in-law has been illegally withholding your fiancé's inheritance using a deliberately vague clause that she, as executor, gets to interpret. She gave his brothers theirs years ago under the exact same circumstances, marriage and stable employment, which establishes precedent. She has no legal grounds to deny Silas his portion. So what can we do?" Marshall leaned back in his leather chair. "Legally? File a petition to remove her as executor and force distribution. It's a slam-dunk case with this documentation. But there's always a but. The question is whether your fiancé is ready to go to war with his mother. Because that's what this will be. Public, ugly, and permanent." I thought about Silas sitting on our couch, asking me to drop charges so Mommy wouldn't be uncomfortable. Let me handle that part. That evening, Edith called. Not Silas, me. Which was bold, considering she was currently out on bail with a court date pending. "Isabella, darling." Her voice dripped with the kind of artificial sweetness that made your teeth hurt. "I think we got off on the wrong foot." "You set my grandmother's dress on fire, Edith. That's not a wrong foot. That's a felony." "Well, I may have been a bit emotional, but you have to understand, watching my baby boy get married is very difficult for me. I'm still grieving his father. And the thought of losing Silas to someone what? Common? Not good enough? Someone who works from home in yoga pants instead of playing tennis at the country club?" Silence. Then, icier. "I was going to say someone I barely know. But since you brought it up, yes. I think Silas is rushing into this marriage without really considering whether you're compatible with our family's expectations. Our family's expectations. Not Silas's happiness. Not what my son wants. Expectations. Here's what I think, Edith. I think you're terrified that Silas marrying me means you lose your emotional support animal. I think you've spent 5 years turning your son into a replacement husband, And the thought of him having an actual partner, someone he chose, someone who isn't you, makes you lose your mind, literally, as evidenced by the arson. Her voice went from sweet to venomous in half a second. You little... I have the video, Edith. Your voice, your face, your confession, and I'm not dropping the charges. Silas will never forgive you for this. We'll see. I hung up. Fern, who'd been listening from my kitchen while stress-eating Target trail mix, looked at me with something between admiration and concern. You know she's going to make your life miserable, right? Oh, honey, she already has been. The difference is now I'm done pretending to be polite about it. Friday afternoon, Edith showed up for her court-ordered preliminary hearing on the trespassing and destruction of property charges. Silas went with her, of course. The dutiful son. I showed up too. With Marshall Sullivan. Which apparently nobody expected because Edith's face when she saw me walk in with a lawyer went from confident to concerned real fast. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who'd probably seen 10 domestic disputes before lunch, reviewed the police report, watched the video evidence, and looked at Edith with the expression of someone profoundly done with humanity. Mrs. Ramsey, you broke into your son's home, destroyed property valued at over $15,000. Edith sputtered. $15,000? It was just an old dress. A restored vintage heirloom that experts have appraised, the judge continued, unimpressed. And you filmed yourself doing it while making threatening statements. Do you understand the severity of these charges? Your Honor, I was emotional. It was a moment of poor judgment. My son is about to make a terrible mistake, and I was trying to protect him. By committing arson? Even Silas looked uncomfortable now. The judge set a trial date for 6 weeks out, maintained the restraining order that prevented Edith from coming within 500 feet of me or our home, and reminded her that bail could be revoked if she violated any conditions. Outside the courthouse, Silas caught up to me. Izzy, this is getting out of hand. Can we please just talk about this like adults? I stopped walking, turned to face him. Your mother broke into our home, destroyed something irreplaceable that belonged to my dead grandmother, and threatened our relationship on camera. And your response is to ask me to be the bigger person. Do you hear yourself right now? She's my mother, and I'm supposed to be your wife. In 3 weeks. Except now I'm starting to wonder if I'm marrying you or joining a hostage situation. His face crumpled. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? 4 years of your mother treating me like I'm auditioning for a role I'll never get. 4 years of Sunday dinners where she picks apart everything I do. 4 years of you asking me to just ignore it, just let it go, just be patient. Well, I'm done being patient. She crossed a line, and there are consequences. I started walking toward my car. Izzy, wait. I love you, Silas, but I need you to figure out whose side you're on. Because right now, it doesn't feel like mine. I drove home, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and realized something. I hadn't told him about the inheritance yet. That bomb was still waiting to drop, and when it did, this whole situation was about to get way more interesting. Saturday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Silas's brother Graham. Graham Ramsey was the responsible one. 40 years old, corporate attorney, 2 kids, a golden retriever named Justice, and the kind of stable, boring life that made Thanksgiving dinners feel like depositions. We'd always gotten along in that polite, surface-level way where you talk about weather and traffic and never anything real. So 17 missed calls was unusual. I called him back. Isabella, thank God. We need to talk. Can you meet me for coffee? Like now? 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Graham at a Starbucks in Dilworth, watching him nervously destroy a napkin while his venti Americano went cold. Felix and I have been talking, he started. Felix, the middle brother, 36, owned a successful construction company, married to his high school sweetheart. About the wedding, about Mom, about everything. Okay? We didn't know. About the dress, about how bad it's gotten. Silas called me yesterday after the court thing, and he was defending her, making excuses. And it reminded me of me, 10 years ago, when Mom decided my fiancé wasn't appropriate for the family. He laughed bitterly. She sabotaged that relationship so thoroughly that by the time I figured out what was happening, Sarah had already left. Moved to Seattle. Married someone else. I blinked. I had no idea. Nobody does. Mom's good at rewriting history. She told Sarah I was cheating. Told me Sarah was after the family money. Forged emails. It was a whole thing. My coffee suddenly tasted like lead. Graham, why are you telling me this? He finally looked up. Because Felix went through something similar. Different tactics, same result. Mom drove away his first serious girlfriend by constantly comparing her to every woman in Charlotte. And we both just let it happen. Because she's our mother. But you figured it out eventually. Too late to fix anything. And here's the thing. After Dad died, Mom changed. Got worse, more controlling, and Silas became her project. Her do-over. The son she could mold exactly how she wanted. Why are you telling me this now? Graham pulled out his phone. Showed me a text thread. Graham. Mom got arrested for destroying Isabella's wedding dress. Felix. What? Graham. Broke into their house. Set it on fire. Got it on video. Felix. Jesus Christ. Graham. We need to tell him the truth about the inheritance. I must have made a face because Graham's eyes narrowed. You know, you already know. I found the documents, the emails, the whole paper trail of your mom jerking Silas around for 4 years while you and Felix got your shares immediately. Graham slumped back. I knew something was off. She kept making excuses about why Silas's distribution was delayed. We believed her because she's our mother. She's the executor. She was supposed to be looking out for all of us. Except she wasn't. He destroyed another napkin. Felix and I got our inheritance right after we each got married. $800,000 each. We used it to build our lives. I paid off law school debt. Felix started his company. But Silas? Mom kept telling him he wasn't ready. That he needed to mature more. Let me guess. Dad never said any of that. The trust treats all 3 sons identically. The exact same criteria Silas meets now and has met for years. I sipped my coffee, mind racing. So why is she blocking it? Control. Pure control. As long as she holds that money over his head, Silas stays dependent, stays compliant, stays hers. Graham's voice cracked. And we let it happen because we got ours. What changed? You did. When she torched your dress, Felix and I realized, this isn't grief. This is sabotage. And if we don't intervene now, Silas is going to end up alone and controlled for the rest of her life. I set down my coffee. What do you want from me? We want to help you. Felix and I are willing to testify. About the inheritance disparity. About Mom's history of manipulation. About everything. Why? Because someone should have backed up Sarah and Felix's girlfriend. And because Silas deserves better than this. And I think you might actually love him enough to fight for him even when he's too brainwashed to fight for himself. I felt something loosen in my chest. The isolation I'd been carrying for 4 years started to crack. I do love him. That's why this hurts so much. Then let us help. Monday morning, I met Marshall Sullivan again. This time with Graham and Felix. Marshall listened to their stories. To their confirmation that the inheritance delay was unprecedented and discriminatory. Then he smiled, the kind of smile lawyers get when they realize they're holding a royal flush. Gentlemen, would you be willing to sign affidavits to that effect? Absolutely, Graham said. And would you support your brother in a legal action to remove your mother as executor and force immediate distribution of his inheritance? Felix didn't hesitate. Yes. Marshall turned to me. Isabella. This changes everything. With their testimony, we're not just talking about property destruction anymore. We're talking about a pattern of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and breach of fiduciary duty spanning multiple years. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop playing defense and go on offense. File a petition to remove Edith as executor, compel immediate distribution with accrued interest, and pursue damages for years of financial harm. Without telling Silas first, if we tell him now, he'll tip off Edith. She'll destroy evidence, manufacture justifications. We need the element of surprise. I looked at Graham and Felix. You're really willing to go to war with your mother over this? Graham's jaw set. She's been at war with all of us for years. We were just too polite to fight back. Felix nodded. I'm tired of watching her destroy people. Let's do this. We spent the next week building an airtight case. Marshall subpoenaed bank records, trust documents, email servers. Graham and Felix provided detailed affidavits. We documented every inconsistency, every promise Edith made to Silas that she conveniently forgot. The numbers were damning. Graham and Felix each received their $800,000 inheritance within 3 months of getting married. Graham in February 2015, Felix in June 2018, both while their father was still alive. Silas had been waiting 4 years with identical qualifications. Even more damning? The trust had been accruing returns. If Silas had received his share on the same timeline as his brothers, he'd be looking at closer to $950,000 with compound interest. Nearly $1 million that Edith had been sitting on. For control. Marshall also got expert appraisals on the dress from 3 separate vintage textile specialists. The consensus? Replacement value was conservatively $18,000. Emotional value? Incalculable. Then came the strategic part. We're going to host a family meeting, Marshall explained. Neutral territory. I'll mediate. We'll present everything. The inheritance disparity, the pattern of manipulation, the financial abuse, all of it. Edith will never agree to that. She will if we tell her it's about resolving the wedding situation amicably. She thinks she's coming to negotiate dropping charges. Instead, ambush. Legal intervention. Marshall corrected with a slight smile. I went home that night and looked at Silas, my fiancé, who still thought his mother's arrest was a minor misunderstanding, who still believed family loyalty meant endless forgiveness. I was about to blow up his entire understanding of his family, his mother, his childhood, his identity as the not-ready-yet youngest son. It was going to hurt him, badly, but living under Edith's control for the rest of his life, that would destroy him. Sometimes love means protecting someone from poison, even when they've been drinking it so long they think it's medicine. Hey, Silas said, looking up from his laptop. You okay? You've been quiet lately. Just wedding stress, I lied. You know how it is. He smiled, that sweet, trusting smile I fell in love with 4 years ago. 3 more weeks? Then it's just you and me. Forever. Forever, I echoed. And I meant it. Even if forever started with me burning down every lie his mother had built. That night, after Silas fell asleep, I went back to the filing cabinet, read through every document again, and that's when I truly understood the depth of it. The family trust documents, the irrevocable living trust his father had established 13 years ago, 8 years before he died, naming Edith as trustee with discretionary power over distribution timing. Smart estate planning that was supposed to protect his sons. Instead, it became Edith's weapon. Silas had never received his share. Not because he didn't qualify, not because the trust hadn't matured, but because Edith decided he shouldn't have it. She'd taken her late husband's carefully planned gift to his sons and turned it into a leash, a way to keep Silas forever grateful, forever waiting, forever hers. The trust documents showed their father had set it up when he was in his late 40s, probably after some health scare. He'd wanted his sons taken care of. He'd trusted his wife to honor that. And she'd betrayed that trust more completely than if she'd simply stolen the money. Because what Edith stole wasn't just cash. It was years of Silas's confidence. Years of him believing he wasn't good enough, wasn't ready, wasn't worthy. She'd stolen his self-worth and convinced him it was love. I closed the filing cabinet and made a decision. This ends Thursday. The family meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at Marshall Sullivan's conference room downtown. Neutral territory, professional setting, witnesses. Edith thought she was coming to negotiate my surrender. She had no idea she was walking into her own trial. Marshall had choreographed this like a Broadway production. Graham and Felix would already be there when Edith arrived. I'd be present with my lawyer. Silas would come separately, thinking this was about resolving the dress situation. The truth bomb would be deployed once everyone was seated and the door was closed. No escape routes, no excuses, just evidence. Edith arrived at 6 p.m. sharp, dressed like she was attending a garden party, cream linen suit, pearls, the works. She walked into that conference room like she owned it, saw her 2 older sons, and smiled that saccharine smile. Graham, Felix, darling boys. I'm so glad you're here to help Silas see reason. Graham's face was stone. Sit down, Mom. Her smile faltered. Excuse me? Sit. Down. She sat. Slowly, looking between her sons with dawning realization that something was very wrong. Silas arrived 5 minutes later, confused. What's going on? I thought this was just... He stopped when he saw everyone. His mother. His brothers. Marshall. Me. Somebody want to explain what this is? Marshall stood. Mr. Ramsey, please sit. We have some information you need to hear. For the next 45 minutes, Marshall laid it out like a prosecutor. He started with the trust documents, projected them on the screen. Your father established this irrevocable family trust 13 years ago, 8 years before his death, as part of estate planning. He named your mother as trustee with discretionary authority to distribute each son's inheritance upon demonstrating maturity and stability. He paused. The key word here is discretionary, which means fair judgment, not arbitrary control. He highlighted the clause about maturity and financial stability. Now, let's look at how this discretion was actually applied. Then he showed the bank records. Graham's inheritance distribution, February 2015, 3 months after his wedding, while their father was still alive. $800,000. Felix's inheritance distribution, June 2018, 2 months after his wedding, also while their father was still alive. Same amount. Both brothers received their inheritances promptly after meeting the criteria: stable employment, marriage, financial responsibility. Your father presumably approved these distributions. Silas's distribution? Pending. For 4 years after meeting the exact same criteria. Silas stared at the screen. I don't understand. Mom said Dad's will had special provisions for me, that I needed to wait longer. There are no special provisions, Marshall said quietly. The trust treats all 3 sons identically. Your mother has been lying to you. You could hear a pin drop. Edith tried to rally. That's not... It's more complicated. Silas needed more time. I have a degree, a stable job, no debt, a house, Silas said slowly. What else did I need? Graham cleared his throat. To stay under her control. Edith whirled on him. How dare you? No, Mom! How dare you? Graham's voice shook. Do you remember Sarah, my fiancée from 10 years ago? The one you told me was cheating on me with fabricated evidence? Silas looked at his brother. What? Mom sabotaged that relationship because Sarah didn't fit her vision, and I let her do it because I believed her. I trusted her, and I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. Felix jumped in. She did the same to me. Told Melissa I was embarrassed by her. Told me Melissa was using me for money. Played us against each other until we imploded. That's ancient history, Edith started. It's a pattern, Marshall interrupted. A documented pattern of interference, financial manipulation, and breach of fiduciary duty. And it stops today. He pulled up the emails. Years of them. Edith telling Silas he wasn't quite ready. Silas asking when he'd qualify. Edith moving goalposts, inventing requirements. Promising soon and never delivering. Side by side with emails to Graham and Felix cheerfully informing them their funds were ready. Silas's face had gone completely white. You've been... lying to me? For 4 years? I was protecting you. From what? Financial independence? A life that isn't centered around you? His voice cracked. Edith stood, hands shaking. After your father died, you were all I had left. I couldn't lose you, too. So you decided to keep me prisoner? Silas stood too, and I'd never seen him angry like this. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Like I hadn't earned what Graham and Felix got easily. And it was all lies? Silas, sweetheart. Don't. His voice cut through the room. You destroyed Isabella's grandmother's dress. You broke into our home. You tried to ruin our wedding. Because marrying her means I'd finally be free of you? Marshall pulled up the final piece of evidence. The video from my backyard. Edith's voice, gleeful. This wedding is worthless. You'll never be family. My son deserves someone real. Watching Silas watch that video was like watching someone's heart break in real time. You really believe that? He whispered. You really think Isabella isn't good enough? Edith was crying now. Real tears. I just wanted what was best for you. You wanted what was best for you. He turned to Marshall. What are my options? Marshall didn't miss a beat. We file a petition to remove your mother as trustee, citing breach of fiduciary duty and discriminatory treatment. We compel immediate distribution with accrued interest and damages for wrongful delay. We pursue full restitution for destroyed property. Do it. Silas, please. Edith reached for him. He stepped back. You don't get to touch me. You don't get to call me. You don't get access to my life anymore. I'm done. He looked at me, eyes red but clear. Izzy, I am so sorry. For everything. For not protecting you. For making excuses. For being blind. I stood and took his hand. I know. Graham and Felix both rose, moving to stand with their brother. A united front finally. We're with you, Silas, Graham said. Whatever you need. Felix nodded. Should have done this years ago. Marshall pulled out the prepared documents. If you're certain, Mr. Ramsey, sign here. Your brothers have already signed affidavits supporting your petition. Silas didn't hesitate. He signed. Edith made a sound like a wounded animal. You're all turning against me? Your own mother? You turned against us first, Felix said quietly. Every time you manipulated us. Every time you sabotaged our happiness. You just didn't expect us to figure it out. Marshall collected the documents. Mrs. Ramsey, you'll be served formally within 48 hours. The criminal charges for property destruction remain pending. This is separate. You're facing both simultaneously. Edith grabbed her purse with shaking hands, mascara running, that perfect facade finally cracking. You'll regret this. I'm still your mother. Biologically, Graham said. But you stopped being our mom when you decided we were possessions instead of people. She left. Alone. In that cream linen suit now wrinkled and stained with tears. The door closed with a soft click that felt like the end of an era. 6 weeks later, everything had moved faster than expected. Edith's criminal trial resulted in conviction, criminal trespassing, destruction of property. Since the dress exceeded $15,000, it qualified as a felony. She got a suspended sentence with 5 years probation, community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order. The civil case was even more devastating. The judge reviewed the trust documents, the inheritance disparity, Graham and Felix's affidavits, and the email trail. The judge noted that the trust established during the father's lifetime showed clear intentions of equal treatment, and distributions to Graham and Felix while he was alive established precedent. Edith's failure to distribute to Silas under identical circumstances constituted clear breach of fiduciary duty. Edith was removed as trustee immediately. A neutral trustee was appointed. Silas's inheritance, $947,000 with compound interest, was released within 2 weeks, plus damages. The court ordered Edith to pay full restitution for the dress, $18,000, plus emotional damages, legal fees, and punitive damages for financial manipulation. Total, just over $75,000. To pay it, she had to sell the Myers Park mansion, the house she'd been so proud of. The house that represented everything she thought made her better than everyone else. Gone. She moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment near the airport. No more garden parties, no more country club, no more playing Queen Bee of Charlotte society. Just consequences. Our wedding happened 3 months after the original date. Same venue, the garden at our house, but with a dress Silas bought for me. Not a replica. Something completely different. Something that was ours. It was beautiful. Simple ivory silk, fitted perfectly, with delicate beading that caught the September sunlight. Graham and Felix both stood as groomsmen. Fern was my maid of honor, making sarcastic comments about whether we should have invited Edith for the entertainment value. We didn't. The ceremony was small. 40 people who actually loved us. No performative family unity, no forced smiles, Just real joy. When Silas said, "I do," his voice didn't shake. When I said it back, I meant every syllable. And when we kissed, I tasted freedom. The last I heard, Edith was living alone, working part-time at a boutique, and hadn't spoken to any of her sons in months. Graham occasionally got guilt trip texts he deleted without reading. Felix blocked her number. Silas kept one line open, email, but only for legal necessities. She'd tried to show up at the wedding, got turned away by our security guard, a gift from Graham. We saw her standing across the street during the ceremony, watching through the trees, small, diminished, powerless. For just a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. So here's what they don't tell you about winning. It doesn't feel like the movies. There's no dramatic music, no slow-motion celebration, no moment where everything suddenly makes sense and all the pain was worth it. What it feels like is waking up one morning, about 4 months after the wedding, and realizing you forgot to think about Edith for 3 entire days. That the knot in your stomach that's been there for 4 years has quietly untied itself when you weren't looking. That you can breathe all the way down to the bottom of your lungs again. Freedom's weird like that. It doesn't announce itself. It just happens. Silas and I are sitting on our porch on a Thursday morning in late October, drinking coffee and watching the neighbors walk their dogs. He's got his arm around me, and we're doing absolutely nothing of importance. It's perfect. "You know what's funny?" he says suddenly. "What?" "I have all this money now, almost $1 million. And the thing I'm most excited about is that we paid off the house. How boring is that?" I laugh. "Extremely boring. Congratulations on becoming a responsible adult." "I know, right? 22-year-old me would be so disappointed." He takes a sip of coffee. "Though I did buy you that dress. That was pretty good." "That was pretty good," I agree. We're quiet for a minute. Then, "Do you think she's okay?" "Mom, I mean." I consider lying, but we're past that now. "Honestly, I think she's exactly where her choices put her, and I think that's not my problem, or yours, to fix." He nods slowly. "Graham's therapist says I'm not responsible for her emotional well-being, that I never was, even though she spent 5 years convincing me otherwise. Graham's therapist is right. It's just weird. My whole life, I thought being a good son meant making her happy. Turns out being a good son actually meant having boundaries. Who knew? Literally everyone except you," I say, and he laughs. Fair point. The truth is, Silas has changed in the 4 months since the confrontation. Not dramatically. He's still the same sweet guy who brings me coffee in bed and remembers to buy the fancy trash bags I like. But there's something different in his posture now. Something straighter. Like he's been carrying a backpack full of rocks for years, and finally figured out he was allowed to put it down. Graham's doing better too. He reached out to Sarah, the woman Edith destroyed, and while they're not getting back together, she's happily married with twins in Seattle. They had closure. He apologized. She told him she'd figured out it was his mother's manipulation years ago and had already forgiven him. They're Facebook friends now, which is the modern equivalent of, "We're cool." Felix and his wife Melissa renewed their vows last month. Small ceremony. Just family. Meaning us, not Edith. Melissa told me it felt like reclaiming something that had been poisoned, making it clean again. I understood exactly what she meant. As for me, I framed a photo from our wedding and put it next to the photo of my grandmother in her own wedding dress. They sit on the mantle together now. 2 brides, 2 generations, 2 women who refuse to let other people's bitterness steal their joy. Some mornings I look at those photos and talk to my grandmother like she's still here. "You'd like Silas," I tell her. "He learned how to make your biscuits. They're not as good as yours, but he tries. And he stood up for me when it mattered. You'd be proud." I think she would be. Last week, Edith sent Silas an email. The first communication in 4 months. It said, "I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. You turned your brothers against me, married that girl, and destroyed our family. I hope it was worth it." Silas showed it to me, asked what I thought. I thought for a minute, then said, "I think someone who genuinely believes she's the victim after committing arson, financial fraud, and years of emotional abuse isn't someone who's learned anything. I think she's still rewriting the story in her head where she's the hero and we're the villains. And I think you should delete that email and go back to enjoying your coffee. He deleted it. Then he said, "You know what's messed up? Part of me still feels guilty, like I abandoned her. That's not messed up. That's what happens when someone spends years training you to feel responsible for their emotions. It takes time to unlearn. How long? However long it takes. There's no deadline." He kissed the top of my head. "Thanks for not giving up on me. When I was being an idiot and defending her. You weren't being an idiot. You were being someone who'd been gaslit for years. There's a difference. Still, you could have walked away." "I could have," I admitted. "But then I would have missed out on being married to you. And I really like being married to you. Even though I'm boring now, excited about mortgage payments and retirement accounts. Especially because you're boring now. Boring is underrated. Boring means I don't come home to find my belongings on fire." He laughed. "Yeah, that's a definite upgrade. Here's what I learned from this whole train wreck of a situation. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are actually the ones putting conditions on everything. Sometimes family is just a word people use to justify terrible behavior. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if that someone is your mother. And sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. It looks like a quiet Thursday morning on your own porch, drinking coffee with someone you love, realizing that the best punishment for someone who tried to control you is simply living well without them. Edith wanted to keep Silas dependent, isolated, and convinced he wasn't good enough for independence. Instead, he's thriving. We're thriving. Building a life she can't touch, making decisions she can't influence, creating happiness she can't poison. And that feeling of freedom, of autonomy, of choosing your own family instead of being trapped by biology, that's the real victory. Not the money, though the money helps. Not the legal vindication, though that was satisfying as hell. The real victory is this. I forgot to think about her for 3 whole days. And tomorrow, maybe I'll make it 4. The wedding dress, the new one, the one Silas bought me, hangs in our closet in a preservation box. Sometimes I take it out just to look at it. Not because I'm planning to wear it again, but because it represents something. It represents a man who finally chose his partner over his mother's manipulation. It represents brothers who decided loyalty to truth matters more than loyalty to dysfunction. It represents a woman, me, who refused to be small, quiet, or accommodating just because someone else couldn't handle her taking up space. My grandmother's dress burned in a backyard on a Tuesday in June. But what rose from those ashes was something Edith never anticipated. Not revenge, not bitterness, not even hatred, just freedom. Pure, simple, beautifully boring freedom. And honestly, that's the best ending I could have asked for. Turns out the best way to handle someone who thinks you're not good enough is to build a life so good they become irrelevant. Who knew?